minutes. Come on. Hello, I'm Pam Hoffman, Everyday Spacer.
I'm Jeff Miller, CME Computer and IT Solutions.
At Everyday Spacer, we show regular folks how to personally and directly participate in space exploration, science, and astronomy. We're here on Friday nights at 9 p.m. Pacific Time, 12 midnight Eastern Time, where Isaac is, and 6 a.m. on Saturday in Germany. We're broadcasting live from Thousand Oaks, California. Thank you so much for being here.
What?
And
just do this real quick.
January 7th at noon Pacific Time, I'm doing a cybersecurity Zoom where basically talk about different things that are happening and doing a Q&A for it.
Yeah, sometimes we'll have some cybersecurity news for you, but right now we just want to encourage you to sign up for the Zoom if you would like to attend. Go ahead.
Okay, tonight's guest is Isaac Arthur. We'll be back in 8.3 seconds.
Sure. There it is.
Okay, there's a link to that book in the description. If you want a signed copy of the book, write Pam at everydayspacer.com for details. And we've got some people showing up now. Janie is here.
Hey, Janie, welcome.
And
thanks for joining us.
Cliff, hi, Cliff. Cliff's from Australia, by the way. And
hey,
Dawn. Yep.
Yeah, Dawn lives out by you, Isaac.
Oh.
And we've got a couple of people that showed up very early.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, here.
See if you recognize any of them.
Oh, here's someone that just showed
One
up.
of them I definitely recognize.
And there's Scott.
Was the one I always know the episodes were okay with because he posts and lets me know, which is appreciated. So.
And then here's someone that showed up beforehand, and this person showed up beforehand, and this one was the first one to post about 45 minutes ago. So.
All right. Excellent. So you're here.
Okay. Yep. So we're giving this another shot. So there's so much to say about Isaac Arthur, and we know you want to hear from Isaac himself. So we'll set it up and let him take over.
So between his education, the Army, being a science educator, and president of the National Space Society, Isaac has a lot going on, and like 3 kids and a wife and a farm. And anyway, we mostly know Isaac via his YouTube channel and some of the videos we've watched.
Yeah, I first learned about Isaac years ago when I came across his speculative videos.
So thank you for being here, Isaac. We're going to start by asking you to tell us how you got involved with space exploration to begin with.
Well, again, Pam and Jeff, thank you so much for having me on. And sorry about last week, not quite working out. So I guess for how I got involved in doing kind of science and futurism videos approach, I started off naturally, as you might guess, as a bit of a geeky family. So my mom, my dad, my grandfather, very into sci-fi. I grew up on Star Trek, both the original series and TNG, which had just come out then, and an awful lot of Doctor Who, mostly Tom Baker, but whichever one was going on the screen at that time. I think about Peter Davison at that point. And that kind of gave me a very strong, I don't know, I would say immersion into that environment. So both my parents, they met when they were physics majors, even though my mom went into computers. So it was kind of built in, no surprises. I guess I kind of knew I was going to be a physicist from a young age. And then when I was partway through grad school, I left to go join the Army during the war. When I got back, I didn't like the idea of going back into research or being a professor. So I went to a different side of things, missed the science, missed the discussions, started hanging out with a bunch of sci-fi writers online who wanted to have more realism in their content. And I did a video just to kind of explain the concepts I've discussed a lot, that I might present a little bit better and I wouldn't have to repeat myself so much. And I get this email from YouTube says, "You have a subscriber. Congratulations." So, oh, cool. What's a subscriber? So 4 months later, this is in 2014, I did another video, and I watch it at least once a year to remind myself how much better the quality gets with practice. And
you have a lot of subscribers now, like over 100,000, right?
It's like 830,000 right now. Yeah, it's a lot. it is interesting over the years because it's you've got about a million or so on other platforms, things like that too. But it's hard to kind of figure them out because some places they follow, other places they subscribe, other places you have no idea. But it is one of those things where I was so impressed. There was like 40 people who wanted to watch one of the episodes. So when I was getting around to do the next video of number 2 on the Fermi Paradox, I think like 100 views on that original video. I was like, wow. It's like if I just given a lecture to a well-sized room. This is awesome as a platform. And I thought there might even be hundreds, even a couple thousand people interested in this topic. Yeah. I never thought there'd be so many people in these topics. And the thing about like with the audience, and I think we were talking beforehand, but I get most of my episode ideas from the audience in the comments, is that most of those folks, if I'd known them in college, would have been my best friend. Just nice. So it is awesome whenever you're in kind of a niche interest. One, you can help grow it by discussing a lot and introducing people to how neat an idea it is. But the other end is that it's just so validating to get to know so many people. Like, I love this topic. This is one I've always been interested in, and it was nice to hear about it. And because we do discuss so many things that come out of science fiction too, it's my great source of example. We're always first and foremost a science channel, but sci-fi is such a good and fun, I should say. I like using the sci-fi examples, probably more than I need to, just because I enjoy them so much. But it's a way to discuss it when people with it's kind of familiar to them. And you find so many people always kind of thought about afterwards as the fridge logic moment of I watched that movie and then afterwards I think to myself, that doesn't really make sense. Why'd they do that? Or with the Death Star, why didn't they cover those ventilation ports or something like that? And start thinking, what would it really be like to live in those high-tech futures? And yeah, it's fun to discuss it. Say people, it's like my job as professional seer. I was going to get a business card at my wife's suggestion. I thought I could put professional seer on it. I'm right 51% of the time. And I thought to myself, well, that's probably really optimistic, but it's you cannot really picture of the future is going to be like. Obviously, it's
Naomi's here,
but we can discuss like what things would, what would be the key things, what things would go around, what would be the pivot points of the critical issues that might go with that, and that to some degree you can kind of nail, and that's kind of what we aim to do too.
Yeah, we had a couple of people say hi. We're really glad you're here. Adam Redwine and Naomi. Naomi's kind of a regular on our show, so cool.
Pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, I saw your shows. I think you were talking about one of your early shows about space colonies, because that was a really big interest of mine at the time. In fact, dealing with what would be the weather patterns inside a cylindrical station.
Oh yeah. And that's surprisingly hard to model, as it turns out.
Rain, when the gravity is lower up top where the rain forms, does it actually fall? It should, yes. It should eventually kind of do that. But that gets that kind of trickier thing of like, well, how fast is it turning? Well, you get the Coriolis effect. Is it open air? Yep. Is it actually just a pressurized cylinder? Or is the atmosphere decreasing, and it will to some degree anyway, decreasing as you towards the center? If it's wide enough, you actually have a kind of vacuum or very low pressure area down the middle. And all those things become insane to try to actually factor in. I have a friend who does a show, I won't mention my name in this case, but he does a lot of climate analysis and calculation himself in his own field. And he was interested in trying to model it. Come back to me like 3 months later, I asked him, I was like, well, this is your zone. How would you do it? He's like, I can give you some basic ideas, but that's it. That's nothing going on there. This is one of those ones where it's a little bit too complex right now for us to do. I am sure we could throw it in more to model it, but it's not really intuitive. And there's so many other factors that come into play, such as what percentage of the surface area is water, how deep is that water, because you might only have it a meter deep on a habitat, and then is its curved size, because it'd say, well, it's not really a flat cylinder. We might egg shape on the edge, those low gravity regions. And now is that water flowing downhill? And you probably have a bit of a river in all of them. And it's fun to contemplate the options on those. But I think in a lot of cases, we really won't be able to model those well for at least another decade or two, not because it's so complicated, but just because this, that requires too much effort on anyone's part to do it at a purely amateur level, I think. In a little peer review, and I think we'll get there eventually, but not quite yet.
So, but a couple of comments, and thank you, Naomi. We really appreciate you being here. We've got Adam Redwine, who says you would probably get very large raindrops, I would think. And
Um,
also, there's a huge difference between tropical rain and rain in temperate areas.
I think that is certainly true. I think it would depend on how you were doing the climate and where the sun was set up. So a lot of the weather pushes about the raindrops. That would be just a matter of them being larger drops not falling is the one thing. But yeah, I expect to see that one. But then again, you've got I don't know how the snow would work too. Uh, my friend Brian First, he does a lot of the space habitat drawings that everyone's most familiar with, and he did a winter holiday one a few years back that was awesome. And I mean, we talked about possibilities of how that might actually work there. And again, it's one of those ones where you almost have to wait to see how it's going to happen. So if you got a sun up there that is one big long axis of light as opposed to a big sphere far, far away, how does that change things? Does it matter if you've gone ahead because you're producing it artificially in many cases? Is that only visible light, or did you put an infrared spectrum too? Did you put more red in to make it more photosynthetic? Are you bouncing off the mirrors without the ultraviolet as much in there? And that's presumably how you do it. If you see models of these things where they got the glass sides, that's a nice but horrible concept that would not work well. And it's not because you can't make strong glass. I mean, to be sure, it's just
Peter Thorpe. You know Peter Thorpe, the artist.
Yeah.
He's one of the first people that did one of those cylinder.
Don Davis, another one of the greats of that era too. The High Frontiers. That's the book by Gerard K. O'Neill that inspired the L5 Society. That's the other half of the what made the NSS later on. And those books, that book in particular, the art is still awesome. And
yes.
It's still so inspiring. However, it's like this for almost all the art of these things. Realistically, with most of these space habitats, you would put them inside a non-rotating or slow-rotating superstructure. There's no reason to have them exposed on the outside. You could get some free, spin and launchable ships by having them land on the edge of it or not, which you might. But then it's much easier just to have a tether coming out the side that was spinning. Easier to have that connect too. I should think you could just put a magnet on it, but you put inside a non-rotating one, you have like a clear cap on the end that you bounce light in at the frequencies that you want at that time, and not the ones you don't want. And that's cheaper than generating it artificially, of course, too. But then you've got it coming in through one of the end caps, and that's just going to work out better. And you might put that down some big crystal down the middle or something that spread the light a bit more evenly. But unless you want to generate with some very, very energy intensive processes, you're going to be reflecting sunlight and not pure raw sunlight. So you just pick ones that will not bounce UV, for instance, and maybe you cut some of the infrared out. But that depends a lot on, well, how much light do we want to hear for the brightness we want versus how many radiators do we want coming off the side. And, I've been talking about that topic for over a decade, and it's barely been scratched. And there's so much more that could be done with
Well,
it.
a couple more people wanted to say, let's see, the sharp gradient in gravity produced by a spinning hab would produce lots of very strange phenomenon.
Depends on how wide it is, too. If you do something like a Niven-style ringworld, which is supposed to be as wide as the Earth's orbit, although it would actually have to be a little wider, then there's almost no effect of that. There's very little Coriolis because that's spinning slower than your actual Earth is. But the ones like the O'Neill solar, that rotates every about once a minute. I don't know the exact value. I think that's the Stanford torus. It's once a minute, and the O'Neill solar is like every other minute. But it's a lot. It's not enough to make you nauseous because Tony Avowed once a minute is not a nauseating experience, but it's nothing. I don't think I want to be able to see outside while that was going on, watching the Star Wars go like this.
Yeah.
Panorama. But it could be very pretty to watch, obviously too, but not much all the time.
And so this is someone new, Starship Larry. Welcome. Glad you're here. Can you say something about what limits the length of O'Neill cylinders? I've seen that hot dog aspect ratio habitats would not be stable.
So that gets set a fair amount, and there is a certain truth to that. You could stabilize a longer one. If you want to see if you spin something that's very long, look at something in a lathe. It's very long compared to things that's spinning. But there is a tendency, you think of it as like it's in a vacuum, it's going to chink all over the place. That can happen. The ring is a little bit more stable that way. It's a wheel, basically. But you can make them as long as you want. There's a megastructure called a Topopolis, also from Larry Niven, who's awesome. But I got to meet him last year. It was fun.
Is this Larry Okay, I think I know who this is then.
Great.
Yeah. I think this is Larry, what is it, Bartosek?
Oh, yes. I know Larry. Okay, hi, Larry.
Yeah.
But I would say with that one, you can make them arbitrarily long. It's not the same structural limit. Does it take some extra effort to keep it from going all over this? Yes. Yeah. Same for if you want to do something like an orbital ring around a planet that's not equatorial.
Did you say Oprah ring?
Orbital ring, sorry.
Orbital.
Yeah. Another one of those megastructures. I had a horrible speech impediment for years. I guess I still do, but it's a little bit easier to understand nowadays.
If you slow down just a little tiny bit, I think it'll be perfect.
Like anyone who crashes onto one of my earlier videos, to put the subtitles on, it's easier to understand that. But
I use that anyway on regular shows.
Oh yeah, it is handy. I actually might have gotten a little bit worse in the last few months since I started recording them off teleprompter. I can't change them instantly when I catch little errors, so there's more typos in the subtitles than there used to be, but most of it's fine. Also, there'll be occasional missing pieces because I'll do something off the top of my head and I can't just add it in there like I used to. But the Orbital ring, which I know it's a bit of a side topic at that point, is more the idea of a launch system. It's an alternative to the space elevator. You are building essentially a hollow ring, and inside it you have something that's moving faster than normal orbital speed. Outside it is a second non-rotating sheath, or rotating at the geostationary rate of once every 24 hours. And that makes it fixed to the ground, but only in maybe low Earth orbit. You could actually put it in the atmosphere if you want to. Inside, you have a thing that's moving faster, and the combined angular momentum is what the mass of that object needs to orbit at that height. So as you're doing that, you can have things hanging out the side of it, like a tether that would go down to the planet below. That doesn't need to be anywhere near as strong as a traditional space elevator would need to be, because it's only going 80 miles, not 26,000 or 22,000 miles. And so that does make it a lot easier to do. But any of these systems are going to have way more engineering challenges to making them. You can go to someone back in ancient Egypt or someplace and say, this is how a highway works. They say, oh, okay, it's rocks along the road. We got roads. So yes, it's a nice flat rock. So that's all there is to it. No, God, no. Let me explain what reinforced concrete is.
Or Roman road. My God, those things are still around.
Complex, yeah. And most of them, thankfully, that are still around were buried, which is how they survived. The others got regular use and did eventually wear down. Yeah. But you will have so many more layers of engineering, all these things that we can comprehend right now. We can say that basic physics and engineering works out, but there's going to be so many different little bits. As an example, we can say, oh, hey, people don't get nauseous from 1 RPM of rotation. That's not a big deal. So they can live there just fine. And probably most mammals be fine with that. How about the bees? Are the bees okay with that? They navigate off the sun, and they might be very sensitive to something like that. So you might build a wonderful O'Neill cylinder and find out that you can't pollinate anything with half your preferred pollinators. You'd probably find some that would work, but you might have to take extra efforts at that point. And that is kind of the nature of any artificial system, is that because this is a natural system, it does need kind of constant patchwork and updates. Even nature tends to be much more dynamic than people tend to think. So that is going to be the biggest aspect of that, is in many ways your space habitats, your bigger space habitats, not your von Braun real, but the big ones meant to be ecologies. Those are less of an engineering and physics issue and much more of a environmental, ecological, biological, sociological, economical kind of issue. Those are far, far harder problems to solve than the engineering.
Interesting.
But
so, go ahead. Did you have something to finish?
No. I said I think they probably can be solved. I think it's one of those questions of what the best way is to do it.
Right. So I would really love to a little more. Yes, I can talk, but not right this second. Tell us a little bit more about your education. Did you actually get a PhD by 20? Is that what I understood?
No. I got my I dropped out of high school when I was 12, actually. And then I went to college when I was 16, graduated when I was 20 with a bachelor's degree in physics, went on to grad school for a few years, and then left after I took all my coursework before committing to field for that. I was a biophysicist by training at that time. And then I went into the Army, and this is shortly after the war had started, and was there for about 7 years. And when I got out, I didn't really feel like going back to university to finish the PhD up. So.
Got it. Okay, I see. I thought you had a PhD. And so my question is, do you think this is something you need to do a show on YouTube? I mean, or really anything? How do you feel it's it's enhanced or made a difference for you in doing your YouTube show or anything else you do?
I would say it certainly does not hurt to have degrees in it. There are some other physics channels where the person does have a PhD in it, and it certainly doesn't hurt them in any way. I want to kind of careful here. It takes a lot of effort to work to the PhD, but that is also not an absolute necessity to do almost anything in the sciences. Freeman, Dyson, one of my personal heroes on that, or Larry Newman for that matter. These are both people who are very knowledgeable of physics. Certainly Freeman Dyson was. He was Feynman's preferred acolyte, and he never got his PhD in it either. Oh. He certainly merited it. He was teaching at it was Harvard or MIT. But there's a lot of examples like that. Certainly we can see that with gentlemen like Musk or Bezos. This is not their area, but they know it better than most PhD, actually most postdocs I know. And, without ego, I would say I would have no problem throwing in against your typical postdoc on knowledge on physics. But is it a necessity to get it? No, it certainly isn't going to hurt you, though. But there's a lot of work. Once you finish up that first couple of years of grad school, what you're going into is a specialty. And I don't think I could have specialized in this then anyway, so it would not have really helped me in that regard. But that's not any way to demean the effort that people go through with that. I have a lot of my friends who stuck around on that, and there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears on that end of things. I used to joke that when I was in the Army, that it was much less stressful than grad school, and that really wasn't that much of a joke. Even when I was deployed to Iraq, and I was artillery and infantry when I was there. Was mostly on day-to-day level less stressful than grad school was. But never feel like you have to get a certain amount of education to be able to talk with authority on something. You have to get expertise to be able to talk with authority on something.
Yeah, and I notice as we do this show, we definitely learn so much, and it's been really a fascinating journey. We do have several comments. I don't want to get too far behind on them. So let's see. Cliff is kind of going back to the O'Neill type station, but the mass that you are talking about is huge.
Millions of tons for an O'Neill cylinder, yeah. Maybe 10 megatons for Stanford Taurus. It's a lot.
Wow. The tech is getting better, but you will need most of the resources on the planet to build things like this.
Yeah.
So you could build just out of the moon. Well, let's say. What is the moon's mass? Something on the order of 10 to 22 kilograms, and one of these O'Neill cylinders would be something like 10 to 10. And those are napkin math numbers, but that's a difference of a factor of order of a trillion. So you build a trillion out of that. And it might be a little bit more, might be a little bit less. You got to bring in other materials like water, nitrogen from other places. But the amounts needed to build these things is staggeringly tiny compared to the planet that we're on. Basically, because you need a meter or two, maybe 10 meters of material between you and the outside universe beyond a rotating habitat. Earth, you've got 6.7 million between you and the core. That's a lot. You don't need that much. And say, well, it's going to be dangerous. Well, you got, basically one ton of air directly over your head. Yes, that's what's implied there by that pressure. That's all that's protecting you from space. I would cheerfully trade that for a meter of steel in terms of armor. So they're much safer in a lot of ways too. You got all that protective dirt underneath you, but it's not protecting you from anything coming from above. So
Adam Redwine says, I started studying art in Paris, France, and ended with a degree in physics in Kentucky. Just about to finish my PhD in nuclear engineering in Israel. Would you like to be on the show? PhD is a lot of work and kind of a pain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I would say we could use a lot more nuclear engineers. It's been hard to find people wanting to stay in it just because it's not been exactly a preferred technology, especially post-Cold War. But it does seem like it's making a bit of a comeback. And we've done some episodes on small modular reactors and even thorium, which is an interesting one. But
it's more green than a lot of things, isn't it?
It's hard to think of anything much greener that we can use, just because even solar, you tend to have such an investment in materials, but it depends a lot on how you're doing it too. It's more than just how much carbon you put out. With being green, when you're making power, are you doing a lot of rare earths and all these being processed cleanly? But in the end, all industry is going to produce some problems, but they do give you the resources to actually fix those problems too. So it's just a choice. Are you going to do them and increase your ability to actually get stuff done by having more power, more industry? or are you going to kind of step back and let things just do them themselves? Make the case either way, but I feel like humanity made that decision a long time ago, and we can choose to unembrace that, I think. But for my part, I kind of like the idea of fixing our problems by getting better and stronger and more prosperous in the process. And that is one of the things that space offers us, because 99.99999% of everything is up in space.
Mm-hmm.
Dawn says nuclear power is going to the moon. Yay.
I think nuclear power would be very helpful on the moon. And I don't just mean as a power source. But what's neat is it would be a hard lift, a very heavy lift, to try to get nuclear thermal rockets on Earth for going to space. They're great technology, but I think there'd be a lot of worry about using them for getting out of the atmosphere. Once you're up in space and you're a couple thousand miles away, up geostationary orbit or higher, I think people will worry about it less. And it solves so many problems for trying to do things like asteroid mining, Mars bases, fuel extraction and creation on Mars. Those just become so much easier with nuclear. And you can do it with solar, but and it might even turn out in many cases that's better. But on the moon right now, it sure would be nice to have nuclear power for those 2 dark weeks every day. So
yes. So I'm going to address this, but I'm not going to show it. Adam Redwine, we will do that. Would you mind writing down the... Cool. So I got a couple more comments for you. Hang on. So let's see. I think this is someone new, user PZ and some numbers. Thanks for being here. We really appreciate it. I heard of a paper in which it was proposed that a large bag of carbon nanotubes could be wrapped around an asteroid and spun up so the material and the bag form a hollow cylinder. Could that work? What an amazing question.
Yeah, because you rely on the tensile strength of the bag at that point in time to hold it, which in theory should work. I should point out carbon nanotubes are pretty resistant to cutting. That they're very sturdy against that. Same with graphene. If you try to cut a graphene sheet with a knife, you're going to cut your knife in half. So,
wow.
But I don't know if I'd want to try to do it that way. Realistically, I think you're going to be a lot better off getting your superstructure built than spinning that superstructure and adding that mass as you go, especially because you're going to be wanting to process in the soil and landscape as you go. I think just spinning all like that at that point, now everything's under gravity. So you spun it out, it's going to be evenly around there, just like a centrifugal force. It's all spun on the sides, roughly evenly distributed, hopefully. If it didn't distribute quite evenly, you might get some weird wobble. And now you need a bulldozer to move that dirt around. Whereas before everything was under zero gravity, you could have put stuff more or less where you wanted or under low gravity. And I think where you would normally do your landscaping phase is probably sticking to something like a moon gravity or even a little bit lower. And at that point in time, you're in a much better position to do all your landscaping, where you show some gravity showing stuff where it's supposed to be. That said, you're going to want to slowly crank that up, because changing the gravity is going to change your landscaping quite a lot. So, and I think the biggest thing is you really want a lot of hills and valleys built into things like this, because the horizon is not natural. And you don't really notice where the horizon's at unless you would actually see that far. If you got forest, hills, everything around you, not a big deal. And I think that would be kind of and it's relatively easy to give yourself dips and valleys on one of these things without using a ton of mass. We're talking about using big puffs of aerogel. That would be optimal if we get that working. But you can just put pockets of empty material in there. It's a vacuum, a little dimple. And that works better too. Structural issues, of course, but minimal.
Well, you could also use it for habitation. Just hide it under hills, artificial hills.
Yeah.
But yeah, also messing up the inside of the cylinder would also possibly decrease the chance of a windstorm developing that runs along the cylinder.
Oh yeah.
Well, I would say especially early on, because you can model stuff in the lab all you want. Yep. And this is what we know from doing this stuff for a few centuries. Maybe we'll get computers that are so awesome they really can model anything perfectly without real world data. But I think I would really want to see the environment of one of these things began spinning up to try to guess what the weather is really going to be on one of those. And even when you're just doing one that's a little bit wider or a little bit slower spin, it'd be nice to have some real examples.
Yes, Galloping Gertie comes to mind.
But you always get yourself some real world data where you can.
Right,
first.
right.
But I think it's not a bad idea. Let's talk about how do we extract resources from an asteroid? Sometimes we'll say, well, yeah, okay, wrap a shell around the asteroid or a carbon nanotube bag like that, graphene bag, spin it up, and then it's been centrifuged. Now, is the matter actually easier to get there? Well, it depends on the type of asteroid. Some are actually pretty hard metal balls. Others are just piles of gravel that are loosely held together by gravity and not much gravity and lack of anything else to go, I suppose, some adhesion. But each of those will be different, and we don't really know the best way to mine these things yet. That is another one of those things where we can model it. We can do some experimentation here on Earth or even up on the space station, but we're going to be a lot better off actually doing a few pilot projects first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I see jackhammers on an asteroid being
fun.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was one of those ones that if you tend to think about it, I think what you would do is we say, do I want to have a pressurized dome that I'm working on or when I'm mining? Because that might just be something like, well, we'll use the refined oxygen we get out by smelting stuff. Oxygen's a byproduct that way, a waste product, in fact, of refining. Will we use that to just put a thin bag or dome over top of something while we're working that? And there's some air and some containment, so you're not blowing particles all off into space. And that comes that space debris issue is the asteroid belt is pretty thin and full of garbage anyway in the first place, so it's not really a Kessler syndrome incident, but I don't know that you're doing anybody a lot of favors going to make yourself very popular by blowing thousands of chunks of gravel out of your asteroid mine every second into the belt, especially as ships have to approach that to get the stuff and your cargo has to leave there too. So I think you might put up at least an umbrella or a shield or something there where the air will help to slow it down a bit. It gives your miner something that actually not have to require as much spacesuit, and you got a shield that's kind of keeping the matter from going anywhere. There's no gravity, none of any note, even on a place like Ceres, unfortunately, but most of these asteroids we're looking at, the near Earth asteroids that we want to mine first, they got no gravity. So the stuff's just going to float there. A lot of them will be leaving at escape velocity already. And so you need a vacuum at that point to suck it into, to pull it out of the air you're breathing. And that's one way you might mine the stuff, just to smack with the hammer and suck the stuff in and refine it as you go. But there's going to be so many different ways to do it, and there's going to be a way that's the best. And then there will be a better way 10 years later after one's invested all of their capital into those machines. Because that's
10 years or less. I mean, disruptions happen to industries all the time. Hey, I got a couple comments. Let me do these real quick. Cliff says, yes, from the moon, but you are talking far in the future. But with China, India, and all the rest, I don't think it'll ever come to an agreement. I got a couple more from him. That is, if the moon can supply the materials. Now, I don't know why you said Red Dwarf. I know it's the show.
It was a show. Yeah, well, we've done an episode to it too, but yeah, it's a BBC show from a couple years back.
Oh yes, we know it well.
And I'd say I'm a big fan of Douglas Adams, and so Red Dwarf has a lot of the same influence. But I never got quite as in the show. I haven't seen all the seasons of it, but it is always a fun one for trying to think about what would life be like if you had some space arc that took 1 million years to get somewhere. Similar to I'm forgetting the name of the book, but it's by Heinlein. Orphans in the Sky. That's what it is. Orphans in the Sky by Robert Heinlein, the famous two-headed alien in it. When they wake up on board a colony, they're on a colony ship and they don't even know it anymore. In which we also see in Gene Wolfe's Book of the New Sun, Book of the Long Sun, where they're living on board a spaceship, a big needle solar going through space that's been taking its long time to get to where it's going. They've all forgotten why they're going there, and that's a legitimate concern.
Oh yeah, I mean, if the future generations don't care about that, they might decide let's not do this anymore.
Yeah, stuck in at that point too, but then again, are they right? And that comes up in Kim Stanley Robinson's Aurora, where they get there and they try it out and they realize that this is not working well for them, and then half of them decide they want to pack up and go home, and so that's what ends up happening. And I don't think that's quite how that would work out. They're all things you can do to actually turn around in space, but it helps if you got kind of a relay system going along the way, and which is nice because that also lets you circumvent the rocket equation if you need to carry all your propellant. But those require such more of an effort. But again, that's kind of one of the focuses on our show is that if you are doing a lot of stuff in space, it's because you have either gotten really good automation or really cheap space travel to get up there. And that means you can build really big. And at that point in time, you have all those resources. You got these space habitats getting built. If you got automation that can actually economically produce, a nice quarter-acre suburban house for everybody up in space in a space habitat, or whatever it is that they might prefer at that time, you do have the resources at that point in time to grow to a civilization of countless trillions or quadrillions given time. And then you can head out and explore the galaxy at your leisure, because it doesn't really look like either there's no aliens out there who are really going out and expanding and conquering, or they found some way not to do that, or they just don't exist. So which means we don't need to rush. The galaxy is billions and billions of years old, and another 100,000 to grow a population that scale at that point becomes almost a trivial task. I don't think we need to wait that long to do it, but it doesn't have to be done. And there's a big thing about a lot of space development. It does not have to be done in bits, all in one shot. You can do it incrementally. You don't build a highway system day one of colonizing a new continent. That's 200-300 years later. You get there, but you're doing it when you're not 100 pilgrims or what it is landing on the coast. You're doing it when there's millions of people with all that infrastructure in place. And there will be a point where we have millions of people living in space. And then we'll have a point where almost as many live off the planet as live on it. And then we'll have a point where a very tiny percentage of the population actually lives on Earth. That's a long ways off. But whether that's 400, 500, 600, 10,000 years in advance, that one depends an awful lot on how technologies roll out and how culture changes.
Yeah. And my thought on it is, by the time we're at that point, we probably aren't looking for exoplanets, but exo-asteroid belts.
Right.
Because they're so used to living in space that a planet would be an exotic thing.
Well, I think the planets would always remain very valuable territory. But at the same time, you got some colony arc ship that left with the intent of colonizing Earth, 2.0 around Tau Ceti, and they arrived there, and Earth 2.0 is a barren wasteland that makes Antarctica look friendly, and it can be made livable in 10,000 years. In the meantime, your colonists have all spent their entire lives on board a spinning rotating habitat as the space habitat, and when they got there, that's where most of them live too. If you're lucky enough, you probably maybe got decent space elevator technology at that point. You just drop a space elevator down from geostationary orbit, and that's where you park that ship, and that's where everybody lives.
I
some
can
down
see.
low, some go to asteroids, but that's the focus point.
I can see people wanting to live on a planet after living in space for a while, just like we want to go to space while we live on a planet.
Or it's why
you have people who for them the appeal is lost. They'd rather go, I could go land on this empty continent, and again, there's a lot of space on the planet. There's lots of elbow room on that thing, but it's a whole system. And if you grew up on a space habitat, and maybe you were from there originally as a colonist too, because you're more likely to recruit from asteroid miners here locally than say Earthbound, they're going to say, well, I love the idea of having that big colony dome farm you keep talking about, but I love the idea of owning an entire asteroid of my own right now, the size of Mount Everest, and carving a space habitat in that one and selling you guys foil to make giant orbital mirrors so you can warm that thing up. In the meantime, I'm just going to move my thermostat up on my small personal habitat that I can have built inside a decade. I think a lot of folks would go that way.
Right, yeah.
So that was a mining company in Lost in Space?
Which version? To me, I think of the original show still.
Okay.
I don't think back that far, but it was still on rerun mode for me. I remember there was a movie, and then there was a TV show.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think it's for the first season of that. But
I think it's on Netflix. I don't think it was ever on TV, was it, or was it?
No,
I haven't watched actual television in years.
No, we haven't either. So yeah, the original series was on TV when we were kids.
Yeah.
And then there was a movie, really good, I thought. Of course, you know what? I just love it all the stuff.
Yeah.
And then the new series, I think.
I'm trying to remember the name of the actor because he was in Lost in Space. I want to say it's the same guy who played Captain America and Johnny Storm in Fantastic Four. I'm probably messing that one up though, but it'll come to me at some point. But the TV show for it, the one that's on the Netflix version, whatever it happened to be, that was pretty decent for a scene, but I don't really remember the details on it. It was, this is the setup that gets you lost in space, and everything prior to that is kind of just.
I haven't seen all those yet.
Suspension of disbelief to get you at that point. Space 1999. They blow up the
I love that.
Yeah, they blew up the moon, didn't they? But whatever, it doesn't matter. The ship is now far from Earth, and that's kind of what matters. The same for Buck Rogers, it doesn't matter how he got frozen and how sane that is or isn't. What matters is he's woken up, and it's the 25th century. And so...
Yeah, and it doesn't matter in Space 1999, how the moon gets from solar system to solar system, but it's slow enough for them to reach the planet with their ships. Yeah,
that makes no sense at all. And it doesn't. And a lot of times it doesn't have to. But one of the things that against what got the show started was that I would talk to sci-fi writers, and they'd say, "Can we do something here that might be a little more scientifically realistic?" So I can joked at it all the time. And one of the things I always tell people about that, I still tell them now, because I work with a lot of authors, and is never let science get in the way of a good plot. But you can take that good plot and probably find a way to get it scienced more right. And the other end is, when you're doing sci-fi, it's not about getting everything right, scientifically perfect. It's don't say anything that's actually wrong unless you hang a lantern on it, right? If you're going to invent some weird physics or whatever it is, say that's what you're doing. You're like, oh, well, everyone thought it was this until the something got invented, and then we realized that light actually traveled faster than light if you X, what it was. Same thing with sci-fi. What makes good sci-fi? I mean, space opera, military sci-fi. Those are good too in their own way, but it's a different focus. What makes good sci-fi isn't the actual piece of science, the field. You can do it on physics. You can do it on almost anything. You have really good sci-fi for something like the Sphere, where it's just psychology. They're just zooming in on like that environment. Same for the Andromeda Strain. You get a deep drop into into biology there and into this kind of scenario. It's the fact that you took a really well-researched thing of something of science, and you really dwelt on it. Robert Heinlein's got the Half Spacesuit Will Travel. It's the last of his, kind of depending if you count Starship Troopers or not, the last of his young adult series. Great book. It's out of date, but at the time, it still holds up in many ways. He spends the first 2 or 3 chapters basically going into the nuts and bolts of spacesuits at that time, before the space race actually started at this point, right? And doing those details turn out to be very accurate, very right. But it's the fact that he deep dives and explains to you why it is this. And that to me is one of those things that matters so much in writing is, cool stories, cool world building. When you are doing that science dip, do it well. Even if that's the only thing, it could be like As would say, how did fast light travel work here? Well, in hyperspace, we jump in and out. Okay, how does that work? It doesn't matter for this. Let's focus on psychohistory instead. And that's kind of the focus there on that. And then, so much of sci-fi from that era is, let me take one grand concept and just really discuss it.
Those guys were scientists.
Yeah. Well, yes, but that's a big factor, of course, too, is things like Wing World by Larry Niven, same concept. They're taking this one grand idea and rolling into it. You don't have to be a scientist to write good sci-fi. It certainly does not hurt, right? But people are not really, they don't want a textbook. It's the same like with the show. We keep things entertaining, but we are not a sci-fi show. We just use it as a methodology for explaining fun stuff. It's kind of takes a lot of effort to keep the audience engaged. But with a good story, I don't want a 20-minute lecture that's at the start of watching Star Wars. That's not how you do that. But you get bits and pieces as it goes because people are interested. And if you're going to do one on like how do you freeze people and get them someplace, Alien was a great movie. They missed a chance to discuss the impact of something like cryonics. They don't have to talk about the nuts and bolts of cryo, but very little effort really to showing how you be disconnected from the world around you by having done that, or what it feels like to be unglued and what kind of people volunteer for that. Great movie, the first two anyway. But that was kind of to be a missed opportunity there. Now, given that's an absolutely magnificent film, I don't know if they could add that in and do more, but it's an example.
Yeah, it would take away from the focus of what they were trying to do. But
because they do, and that is one of the big things. Like in Alien, is the interactions of the crew in the original film. That is such a key part of this. That they show them being professionals. They know their job. They don't know anything about space aliens. They know space mining figuring, right? And they clearly, they are a bit of a family situation because that's what they rely on. So there's implications there, but it was one that I think could be explored more if they had time or inclination. And I think they did try a little bit in the sequel when she wakes up, back on Earth. But those are your chances in sci-fi. And again, that's a good example. You say you could overdo that very easily by doing too much of that. So it is definitely a tricky area there. And 2001 is kind of that classic example of, was it first 45 minutes they don't say a word.
Yeah.
And that works perfectly there, although it's hard to sit through, and I've rewatched it since. But then they tried that in Star Trek: The Motion Picture. Just a couple years later, kind of go off of that. And you get those great grand music scores where they just sit there walking out with the new, more expensive version of the Enterprise they can afford to budget for now, and they're just staying there watching it as the ship goes and approaches for like 3-4 minutes, and it doesn't work the same way there. It just doesn't have the same impact. Whereas, we do get to see a little discussion like the Genesis device in the sequel movie. We do get some discussion of space probes there. And it is one of these why Star Trek still has a reputation as being kind of the more hard science sci-fi thing. But is those questions of when you're writing the story, what's your objective? If it's just to sell a book, that's fine. That you don't need to justify it beyond that. But I think for like people like Heinlein, for like Clark, for Asimov, they were science teachers first and foremost. That was a big thing to them. And if that is your interest, and again, it doesn't have to be. But if it is your interest, then you want to take those advantages to find something scientific or something heavy on the knowledge, just kind of explore in depth.
Have you ever written any science fiction, Isaac?
Nothing I'd ever consider worthy of publishing. I am an exposition machine. I do not do good dialogue.
Okay.
That's how mine tends to be.
Okay. I was just curious all of a sudden.
I've helped write quite a lot of it, but I probably could these days just from so much effort on it, but it's not my zone. There are so many other people who could write better than me in that way.
I don't even try.
Worldbuilding, yeah.
So Cliff, this helps me a lot. Jupiter 2 was the spacecraft in lost in space, and Red Dwarf was a mining ship. Yep, that's right. Jupiter 2 was lost the company, and they were lost in space. And then he goes, you never know where an idea can come from, like 2001. They actually did the movie and the book simultaneously. Basically.
Yeah, and when we're doing the Clark Award, we created this new award for the Space Society that's kind of aimed to do science fiction writers and producers. We were putting the Clark Award together and I said, well, what should we make it? And there was a lot of suggestions because it was me appropriate things. So it says we do that double wheel station. I said, why don't we just go with the monolith? That's easy. And we get the monolith, the big monolith. So that's so long as you get one.
Oh, the monolith.
Yeah, and this award's like this big too. We got a little excessive on it. But we were done. We said, well, we should have anything else. It should just be black. Like, well, that'd be kind of boring. We should fill it full of stars because in the movie it was full of stars. We said,
yes.
And then we're like, well, now it's full of stars. And we're talking to the artist who designed it. And he said, it's nice. I was like, yeah, maybe we should put Jupiter or Saturn on it. And of course, that comes up is in the book and the movie, the ship ends up at two separate planets. And the one it's Saturn, the other it's Jupiter. So okay, why don't we just put both of them there? So it made for a much more interesting award when we were done. But,
has that been awarded to anybody yet, or is it coming?
Yeah, we gave it to Joe Haldeman. We have this just in Orlando back in June, and he is excellent guy to chat with too. And then we will be awarding it the second time, presumably in June in Virginia for the next ISDC. But it is one of those new awards. It's like there's a lot of folks who probably, like, we've given awards to Larry Niven in the past, or to Jerry Cornell, a bunch of other sci-fi writers. We've backdated when Arthur C. Clarke, ironically enough. But I was thinking potentially that maybe those folks would be honorary Clarke Award winners afterwards because they've gotten a different award from us, but it's the same category. But for now, we're just getting things started, and it's a lot of fun. It's nice to work with those folks. So.
Great segue, because I'm wondering, like, which came first, the YouTube videos or being the president of the National Space Society? I don't even really know.
Space Society for three years now, and my first involvement with them was actually relatively early on with a couple of things I did not know as well involved with it. But they eventually said, "Hey, Isaac, would you like to come to the ISDC?" And here I got a thing off screen. This is the classic Pioneer Award. So we give all these to JPL and Elon Musk too, so they're very nice to have. But I won that, and for the videos I was working on at the time. And I also, when I was talking with them, said, I've been thinking about doing a series based on our roadmap, which has inspired a lot of mine. So I released this one series called the Becoming Planetary Species. And the last I checked, the series as a whole has something like 3-4 million views on it total.
Wow.
And I could not come to get the award in person because COVID happened. So at the time, I said, well, yes, would you come down and get the award in person? I said, well, I don't know. I don't travel much. And I said, I mean, all these other folks who've gotten it presumably didn't come too. He's like, no, they all came. Except for the one guy who was ICU, and the other guy got too posthumously. And it's like, there's Stephen Colbert's got it, or Musk got it. It's like, okay, well, I guess I'm probably going to show up in person to get it. So I booked my ticket to finally go. I hadn't traveled in years, and COVID. So I was one of the few virtual recipients of it. But after that cleared up, they said, well, we're having the ISDC again. We have this every year. We canceled for a year or two because of the plague. And now we're having it again. Would you come down and enjoy it? And it was awesome. I actually got to meet the Emperor of Korea there, which is an interesting story of itself. But it was such an instant connection. Like, this is kind of going to say with my audience is there are people who, if I'd known them before, I had a large following, and on the internet, I probably made them my best friend. Very cheerfully. These are all the people you just meet. I was like, good God, where were you my entire life?
Yeah.
So I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna have to come back this sometime. And I've been warned by a friend who'd been one of the directors of the past. If you get involved, they're probably gonna try to talk you into being a director or something at some point. So I said, that wouldn't be too bad. I'd certainly love to help out more. So I told him, well, if you see me, you let me know. Not because we
was that Jeff Liss?
No, I know Jeff very well.
Oh, okay.
This was Chris Holland.
Okay.
You give me the heads up on that. Was like, yeah, it's a great organization, but I said, if you see anything you need from me, let me know. And I was assuming they were going to call me back, be like, hey, could you plug our upcoming event on the show? Or hey, we like that video you did. Could you do one on this topic? Or hey, maybe you want to be a director or something like that. Then I get a call from Dale Scran, our COO. He says, Isaac, I was talking to the executive committee, and we were wondering if you want to have some more additional war with us. I says, well, yeah, tell me what it is. But as a heads up, I just adopted 3 children. Like 2 months later, I know about that. I was like, a little busy at the moment, so it's about whatever I can do to help. He's like, well, if you want to be the president of the National Space Center, I was like, okay,
just like that.
So I was like, well, I can't really say no to that one, but I'm going to have to ask my wife first. And she's like, well, yeah, you really can't say no to that one, so we'll say yes. And I got on there. Yeah. So.
Well, I was part of the L5 Society before the merger, even. So I've been involved.
And that was the other one of the National Space Institute that kind of formed and made us the National Space Society, which is international, of course. So,
yep.
But it's a great organization. There's actually other bits of too that have we got a lot of connected organizations though. Some of them are actually part of the NSS, some aren't. I was the president of the organization for over 2 years before I knew of the existence of almost half of our committees.
Oh wow!
We a giant packet of independently and again, it's very intelligent people with very focused missions. So we've got thousands of members and a lot of sub-departments, and most of them operate just fine without me poking at them. So I was like, oh yeah, we should do this sometimes. Like, we do this. Actually, we've been doing this for over a decade. Oh, well, we should publicize this more because I didn't know.
So here we go. How do you think speciation?
Speciation.
Go ahead, you can read it.
How do you think speciation caused by space travel would impact conflicts between warring alien civilizations? Would some species groups descended from a species have different ideas on a war? Yes.
Well, certainly.
What would happen to us?
Well, we could just look at creatures on the Earth between ants and wasps, for example. They very definitely have different ideas about things.
You could walk into 2 separate pubs and get different suggestions about how that might go down. I think that you would not have to wait too long. And I have a habit in the last few years on videos of talking about space colonization and what the issues that might come up. And one of the ones we call interdiction hypothesis, which is like maybe you don't colonize beyond a few hundred light years because you begin realizing you're seeing the stars around you with possible enemies and you don't really have any way of controlling them at all. There's no unified empire that big. And so one of the thoughts that goes through your head is it's not just they are distant cousins, they are is that you might start thinking of them as horrible, dirty mutants, because they're not going to be much like you. Socially, psychologically, it's going to be very different. And that's going to happen very quickly. As I say, I don't think there's any aliens out in the galaxy, but maybe we'll get out there and we'll meet them. And if not, wait a little while and they'll be there. They just happen to share the same planet of origin. And they won't just be our descendants either. They'd be maybe an uplifted cats or dogs. Someone says, I think it'd be a good idea to make a slightly smarter pet, one that can, clean its own cat box. Maybe a new kitten, so that comes to mind. And they'd say, oh, okay, work a little bit smarter. And that gradually gets incrementally a bit smarter until someone says, oh, at this point, it kind of a person, definitely kind of a person. And people think that about their pets already anyway. So now you've got entire, and not just one, probably several different variations of species of intelligent cats, and then more of dogs. Someone's decided to uplift a squid. And now you've got entire species of things that we created in labs that would like to go out and colonize the stars too. And you can't really say no at that point. And so they might breed a lot faster than us too. I think that's actually the plot of a Stephen Baxter novel, though I won't spoil all that. I'm horrible about that, usually spoiling books. So
we got a couple more here. Just accepting titles and roles as they come.
Yeah. So
and you deserve recognition in the roles. Also, Cliff says, I know and have met. I don't know this person, Bert.
So Bert is one of our folks who runs the office down in Orlando at our headquarters.
I see.
And the last poster was up there right before that is one of the people who comments on almost every one of my episodes. And it always makes me relax when I see a post from, well, I don't know actually much about the person, but when I see that post, it's okay, there can't be anything too weird about this episode because he said it was good, so it's good.
Right on.
But so Bert actually runs our NSS Space Forums, which is the other thing our NSS YouTube channel has besides some Ad Astra articles and videos I've done there too. And Bert is a good friend, and he runs a very good space forum, actually. I think they're probably one of the best ones we see online these days.
Nice.
And he's so hard to try to convert that into the modern format, so he deserves a lot of credit for that.
Very good. I have a couple more questions. So I'm kind of thinking about your YouTube channel. You really have a great following, and you sort of touched on how that started and everything, but how did you get the momentum of building it? And I get offers all the time. Oh, your YouTube channel needs this and that, and just pay me some money and I'll fix it for you. I was like, wait.
So I got into it back when it was like the ghetto industry.
What?
We kind of had to do it on our own at that point. I actually, and this is something only the oldest channel subscribers know, is that the Science Futurism channel, which is just Isaac Arthur, it wasn't called that. I've always avoided getting a vanity channel name. Was just my YouTube account attached by Gmail. So there was like a couple of videos of this raccoon that used to come to my porch and get Cheerios from me.
Okay.
That I'd like posted up there, an ALS video where you were supposed to dump ice water over your head. Which I still had that cat. This is 12 some years back, 14 years back. He just got out of Dodge. He followed me out there to watch me dump a bowl of water over my head, and then he's and just a few ones I've done on election material for my area, because I'm in charge of elections for Ashtabula. And those, I took those all down about a year after the first channel video. We got to about a dozen. Well, this is going to start confusing people. It has no relevance to it. So at that point in time, you'll go to channel age, will say, oh, your channel has been around for 15, 16 years. It's like, well, the channel has been around since 2014 in that regard. And I think episode 0 is really being the first one from 2015. But in terms of how that got rolling, it was just, as I said, it was never intentional. And I think a lot of the older channels, at the time, it was, they'll say, well, whenever kid wants to go out to be a YouTuber, and that was a few years ago. Now there might be a TikToker or a social influencer, which I don't know what that is. And I don't want to ever be called that. Are you an influencer? I'm a science communicator. I'll get with that.
Right.
But it's such a wide environment. It's like writing a book. You could be writing travel guides, or you could be writing dictionaries, or you could be writing great fiction. They really have very little to do with each other. And that's the YouTube environment. But most of us who got into it back in that day, like I didn't even take donations or run ads for the first few years on the show. It was all out of pocket. And that kind of turned into a job eventually. It was, oh, hey, this is this is something I love doing, so I'll go for it. But it started off for most of us who got in that era. This was the expensive hobby that we did because we were obsessed with it, and therefore I think that put a big stamp on the kind of material that came out. And I think it changed a little bit with time. It's much harder to get into YouTube these days too, I would say too, but you still can. And the quality level you need to do is still very low. It's just like publishing. You find an area where you have an interest and you're knowledgeable, and where most of the videos on it that got the most views are not really all that good. And then you decide to do something yourself on it. And you might get like 20 people watching it, and that's good. It's like a whole room of friends you can talk to about it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the way you start on that. And I think around video 12, I finally broke 1,000 subscribers.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was that was almost 2016 at that point. So like 2 years, a year and a half after the show got started. And then it's just one of those things that goes very gradually. So you have to be willing to throw yourself at it a lot. And you got to be willing to change your style as necessary for that. So, but it's fun. It is fun. I'm going to say otherwise.
So just kind of finish up, because I know it's like 1 a.m. for you.
It is, yeah.
Thank you for being here. What would you tell someone who would like to get involved with space exploration, science, or astronomy, like right now, doing
right this very moment? There's a couple of ways you can do that. The National Space Society is always looking for members. Yes. And like when I was going to join it, I thought it was reserved for people who are astronauts or built machines for them. And there actually are a lot of those in there. So I've gotten to meet a lot of astronauts since becoming the president. But and that's something you can do just by coming to any of our events. That does, like, you don't have to be gatewayed in there as an officer.
Right.
But that is one of the ways to do it. Another way, of course, is to go work for SpaceX. We had this episode we did space jobs. I put up all the job listings for SpaceX just because when I was writing the episode at the time, it was one of those things where I couldn't do anything with my computer because it was rendering. I could still surf the web. Rendering videos takes a lot of processing power. And I noticed that there were like 18,000 jobs there, more than NASA had at that time. And they ranged from things like barista at the coffee shop to, hey, I would cheerfully have sold coffee as a teenager at a space facility, to lawyers. They had a lot of lawyers, a lot of marketing. But hi there, Australia.
Yeah, hi, Marty the Martian. I think that's a new person too. Welcome. Glad you're here. Yeah, but it's tomorrow. It's 4:30 p.m. tomorrow.
And then again, the National Space Society, very international, are not my predecessors because the job title changed, but Kirby was our he was our chairman of the board until just recently. He replaced Buzz Aldrin as the chair in the late 90s, and he'd been there for quite a while. He just stepped aside for Bruce Pittman. He lives in Australia, made the trip up all the time, still works out that. We have a very strong chapter in Australia, too, that is run by Greg, who's last semester, they can't remember this exact moment, Greg Hunter. Great guy, young guy, too. He's in his 20s, and he puts together space conferences that thousands of people attend down there.
Nice.
And so you do not have to be an astronaut. You don't have to have a PhD in either critical sciences. You do not have to be a billionaire. This is the cool thing about this. So when I was born, it was after the Apollo landings. And to me, I could see the moon landing on MTV. This is back when MTV played music too. So and living through the 80s, living through the 90s, you get something like Robert Zubrin's Case for Space, Case for Mars. That's so inspiring to you at the time because you've heard so many promises about, well, we'll get back there eventually. We'll go there again one day. And it's just not happening. It's not materializing. And it feels like you have to just wait forever. Well, we're done waiting. Finally, it happened, right? It's not, yes, I get to go take a vacation to the moon yet. But there are methods that can make that possible, maybe even this century, for someone who's not a billionaire or even a multi-millionaire. There are methods that could make that really happen. Probably longer, but it's there. And that ability to actually have a career in space, to have a career working, for NASA, for SpaceX, for Blue Origins, or any of those, that's there now. That you can do that.
Yep.
You can be, if you can be the barista. I mean, that's fine by me if it came down to it. But you have that chance to go work for them, to be involved for them, to be one of the supporters, one of the people, one of our space ambassadors who goes around for the ISS, just talking to students, trying to talk them into going to the field. The favorite emails I get from fans, or when someone says, "Hey, I started watching your show 4 or 5 years ago, and I decided to change my major. I graduated a degree in physics last week, or I'm working on my now, or I'm into aerospace engineering and I got a job at Blue Origin," and those make my day.
Nice.
Those always make my day.
So is the next ISTC in Virginia, you said?
Yep, June 4th, June 7th in McLean, Virginia, just outside DC, where the hotel is so much cheaper, which is nice when doing conferences. And we have a lot of folks coming in. It's not completely lined up yet, but we've got folks coming in from a number of the larger space ones like Firefly is going to be sending some folks to talk.
Nice.
We have the usual Heinlein Award winner, which I can't say who that is yet because still waiting for them to confirm they can come. And there'll be a lot of people coming there to see at the dinners, and there'll be a lot of really good presentations. We've run, I want to say it's 17 space tracks this year. Mike was trying to be doing one on interstellar space colonization. Usually we're very grounded to relatively near from things like satellites, even asteroid mining is about as far as we go. But I might actually say yes to that and run a track on interstellar space colonization because it's fun. But it's one of those things where if you love space and you're not been to one of these things, you will walk in and you will say, why, where were these people my entire life? And the answer was at the ISTC. So,
Yep, I ran one, 1995 in Cleveland, and I've been to the one in Chicago.
What's
that?
I didn't even know we had one here in Cleveland. So.
Yes, 1995.
It's passable.
Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah, but I would have been much younger at the time then. And then again,
I was too.
The next one after that is if you can't join us in Virginia, it's going to be in LA again after that, and then back down to Houston. And
LA in a couple years.
Yeah,
that's where we are. We're close to LA.
And we're often there in LA too because it tends to be a good place to do the math. So we were just there 2 years ago. So
yeah, right.
We were there too, yeah. And I think I saw you, but I don't think we actually met.
We might not have. I do a lot of handshaking these events too, and but William Shatner was there. I got to meet him. Michael Dorn came too for War, for those who don't know him. But there were a lot of folks there. That's why I got to do a panel with Larry Niven. And that was awesome because I went in there and I was not expecting to meet him. Dave Dressel took me in and he was like, "This is Larry Niven." I was like, "Oh." And he's a very nice person. So I remember this on those rare occasions I meet a fan of mine in person and they got that briefly shell-shocked look on their faces. Yeah, I do that too. Oh my God, I love this person. We just go,
the only time I've ever choked up, I tried to ask Buzz Aldrin to come to our conference in Cleveland in 1995, and I'm at NASA because I volunteered there, and I'm talking to him. Well, I'm trying to talk to him. I couldn't speak. I never experienced that before. I totally choked up. So,
and the worst thing is sometimes it's better to say nothing at all than to let something come bubbly out of your mouth that's just stupid, which I've done too. But I've got to meet so many people from the show and from the ISS that were my idols growing up. Some on this, like Freeman Dyson, he passed on right before I got involved in the organization. But and there's others where you just have a chance to get to meet people. And I actually had a great conversation with Buzz's son at the last one for a while with drinks. Nice guy too. But you just get to meet these people again who share your love of this. And it is it's just it's good to have that fit in. It's good to get to meet people, and it's good for networking too. It's not just to meet friends; you get to meet people in the real industry if you're looking to get a job in, and you don't have to know anybody. You can just come by. You can just walk. If you're a fan of the show, whatever it is, I'm there. Walk right up and say hi. It's that easy.
Yeah, and to me, it's really exciting because we had a whole bunch of years there. I call them the doldrums, and we just really, it was a lot of what we've called it Boeing cartoons. People were presenting things, but there was no motivation or money or anything, and all of a sudden it has changed.
Right, you need that because someone had to keep the torch alive. It's nice. I say if you're going to be president, this is the best time in the world to be the president of the National Space Society.
Got it. Well, you're right in there. So you definitely sound like an everyday spacer, Isaac. Thank you so much for being on the show. And if you don't mind hanging out just a little bit, if people have questions, I do have a couple more segments that will do some stuff for people. Like I'm going to say Everyday Spacer is sponsored by CV Computer and IT Solutions. We usually get that in somewhere. And we have some stellar events this week. And we're talking about December 12th through December 19th. Globe at Night. The Globe at Night project continues. That's going through the 19th. And if you're in the northern hemisphere, you want to look for Perseus. In the southern hemisphere, you're going to look for Orion. And you basically go out, look up, and report your weather and what you see and how dark it is, those kinds of things. Apparently, it's a very important citizen science project. December 12th, the moon is on the equator. The 13th and 14th, we have a Geminids meteor shower. This generally runs from the 4th of December through the 17th. It peaks the 13th to the 14th. And this is pretty much all night. A lot of times they'll say after midnight, you want to go look for the best ones. This seems to radiate from Gemini. And it's actually one of the most populous ones. The peak rate per hour is 75 to 120. But if you're somewhere like where Isaac and Dawn is, it's freaking cold. So it kind of doesn't matter. But out here, we would love it. The source is 3200 Phaethon. I don't know how to say it. And unfortunately, the moon is waning. It's getting smaller. And the last quarter is on the 11th. The 19th is new moon, so it rises very early morning. You've got a really good night for this particular Geminis. So yeah, check it out. Go find a dark space and don't freeze too much. But go ahead and check out for this meteor shower. December 14th, Hanukkah begins. Spica is 1.4 degrees north of the moon. December 17th, the moon is at apogee, and Jupiter is 6.4 degrees south of Pollux. December 18th, Venus and the moon are in conjunction. December 19th is the new moon. The moon runs low, and Mercury is 5.4 degrees of north of Antares. Sorry. December 19th is also our Friday night show. And because Isaac could be here this week, we're going to go back into that audience request finally. And we'll give you a little bit more on that in a minute. Find us Fridays at 9 p.m. Pacific time on the Everyday Spacer Facebook page and the Everyday Spacer YouTube channel. What inspires you the most for this week?
If you or someone you love, or someone you know, or someone you love, whatever, someone you know, has done something interesting involving space exploration, science, or astronomy, we'd love to share our lives.
I think we got one today, too.
Yeah. Join us again next Friday, December 19th. Sally sent a video about viewing the aurora. Pam will delve into that, and we'll come back, and we will come back next week to let us know what you've found out.
Yeah, I have to see the video yet. I've started it, but I want to finish it. And you know what? The week after that is basically Christmas. We'll do kind of a holiday hang. It'll be probably a short and very casual episode, and just kind of hang out with people and talk to you and see what's going on and get ready for the new year. So Dawn was here, and Janie was here, and Cliff was here. I don't know why Steve Jobs was here.
I think it's a different Steve Jobs.
I think you're right. And let's see, Marty the Martian. We got a lot of new people. And thanks to Isaac, I think is why. Cannon Potter was here. I don't know your name. Sorry. User PZ, a bunch of numbers. Let's see who else is here. Cliff did a bunch of comments. Adam Redwine.
Adam Redwine, yep.
Let's see. That's Dawn.
Yeah.
I know Scott was here.
Yeah, Adam.
Larry was here.
We'll send you an email soon.
Yes. And
and we just got someone named Jedi Master.
Oh, hey.
Yeah, I never try to say Larry's last name because I always butcher it. So.
Bartosek. Andrew Ruiz, I see, and that one's Scott. Scott was here. And I don't know who this is. Rado Hiza? Yeah. Also, Captain Habcub. What's your real names, folks? They're much easier to pronounce. Canna Dwen was actually the first one here, like 45 minutes before the episode.
I always use pseudonyms before I did the show, but it just was my own email in YouTube. I didn't use one on it. Everyone thought it was a pseudonym for Azimuth and Clark, but I kind of wish sometimes I had used one. But there's like so many old Wikipedia things and things like that I wrote on various pseudonyms way back in the day, and I'd say overall it's much easier to just use a real name these days. But
yeah,
I remember it.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Have a great week. Anything else from you?
Nope. That'll do.
Any last words, Isaac?
All
right.
You all for having me on.
All right. Yeah. Thank you for being here.
And like the subscribe button while you're here.
Yeah. If you would like to come back, Isaac, at some point and kind of do a specific topic of some sort, we would love that. So
Anytime.
We've got to buy. Have a great week, folks. We will continue to watch for your comments, and we'll see you next Friday.
Okay.
Good night.
Good night. Or good afternoon for those of you in Australia.
Yeah.
Hang on, Isaac. We'll talk to you for a minute after.